We are going through our elections to establish a committee for your party to develop your party. We've got to come out of this very short election period with a sense of purpose and a sense of unity and a sense of inclusion. And we've got to ensure that all our focus is on building in our communities, on being a campaigning force at the very grassroots in our communities, not some top-down organisation. I think we've all had enough of those in the past. And I want to say a personal thank you to an awful lot of people that showed me enormous friendship, courtesy, and loyalty during my time as leader of the Labour Party. And I think they began to recognise the realities of what the British establishment was capable of towards a party that they felt threatened their existence and their privilege. And I'll be very proud of those people that did so much work. When I stood down, there were 600,000 members of the Labour Party. They don't publish figures anymore, but I would wager they're well below 200,000 at the moment. But this isn't about recreating the Labour Party. It's not a lesson in the history of what went on in the past. It's about how we go forward, obviously learning lessons from the past. There are 4.5 million children in Britain living in poverty at the present time. The top wealthiest 1% of the British people have times 230 the wealth of the poorest 10%. There are 250,000 people who are homeless at the present time. Most people in the private rented sector pay at the least level 30% of their pay on rent. At the other end of it, 70 or even 80% of their rent is taken up, their pay is taken up by their rent in the private rented sector. We have horrendous levels of social injustice and inequality in our society. Food banks were almost unknown in 2010. In my own constituencies, at least one food bank in every one of the 8 wards that I represent. And the same would be said over most of the country. Over 1 million people regularly have to access food banks, and they're often people in work. And so what we have is the most appalling growth of inequality, poverty, and injustice in our society. Rough sleeping homelessness rising all the time. So many people having to spend their lives just meandering from one in London, one tube station to another, other places, bus stations or whatever, trying to collect the money to get them through a night shelter and then worry about how they're going to feed themselves after that. None of this is necessary. None of this is right. It could all be so different. Yet we have a government that is continuing austerity. Austerity 2.0 is with us. With the exception of the Department of Defence, every single government department is facing what's called efficiency savings or direct cuts at the present time, and that hits local government as well. We have wars going on in Ukraine. We have wars going on in Palestine. We have a war going on in Sudan. We have wars going on in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And we have horrendous levels of militarism around the world. And instead of standing up for peace, instead of being that voice for peace and that voice for justice, the government proposes to ultimately almost double defence expenditure, which will mean more cuts in other areas and increasing militarisation of our society. Where is their criticism of Donald Trump and his national security strategy, which essentially says that the US needs everybody else's natural resources, so it'll go around the world and get them, as they've gone in to Venezuela, as they're threatening to go in to Cuba, as they're threatening in so many other places around the world. And the environmental crisis that is obviously on us, it's obviously happening. There's obviously a massive loss of biodiversity. There's obviously a loss of environmental sustainability. There's obviously massive levels of global weather patterns that are changing and creating extreme and unusual weather patterns. Yet all 3 of the parties in Westminster are running away from this, taking it down on the agenda. All of them are concentrating on the fear factor of what reform might do. Reform do well because they can go into any community that's suffering bad housing, loss of jobs, unemployment, insufficient public services, and somehow or other miraculously blame it all on refugees. It's complete nonsense, it's totally dishonest, and it is fascist thinking that blames a vulnerable minority of people who are refugees for the problems created by free market capitalism and this kind of society. So we have to do something different. That's why we're determined to set up your party. Your party, rooted in communities. Your party, open to people in all those communities. Your party working with people in their communities. The kind of community organising model that is so important and the only way to combat the power of the mainstream media, the malign influence of GB News, the malign influence of so many other media platforms run by right-wing newspapers. And so we need now to organise ourselves. We've recruited a lot of members. We have a lot of people signed up as members at the moment. We have lots more who are looking to us to work with us in the future. And that means we've got to get going on it very, very rapidly. We are electing people representing each region of the UK and specifically each English economic region, 2 per region. And then we obviously develop your party autonomously in Scotland and Wales. That is an important point to make. And we will be a very strong and very powerful force. And we will be fighting elections, the council elections coming up in the very near future, whole raft of postponed elections that will take place in 2027, and then a parliamentary election 28, 29 or thereabouts. But this is not just an electoral machine. In fact, it's almost anything but an electoral machine. Electoral machines concentrate solely on the technology, the technicalities and bones of an election in order to deliver a vote on the day. We're different. We'll be uniting people in communities to win those battles to prevent hospitals being closed, to win those battles to get Palantir and the privateers out of our National Health Service, to fight for water privatisation, to fight to expose water privatisation for the hypocrisy, the lie and the con it's been. £72 billion taken out of the water industry by private profit. And we are suffering pollution and damage to our environment as a result. And so when we challenge all these things, we want something different. We want democracy in the running of the water industry, in the energy industry. We want democracy in the way public services are run. We want to challenge the attack on civil liberties, the attack on right to jury trial, the attempt to bring in ID cards, and so many other things. It's up to us to do that and work with all those existing campaigns, with all those people that are out there working. Now, I'll finish on this. When we've gone through these elections, we'll have a CEC. The job of that CAC will be very important to develop the party in every part of the country, in the regions and so on, to decide where we prioritise campaigns and what we do about it. But it's also about recognising that within our membership, there are people with massive knowledge and massive talent. So I want us to see us setting up large communities of people who want to develop policies in a particular area. The government is, for example, reviewing disability benefits with a view to cutting them. It is attacking personal independence payments with a view to cutting them. Why don't we have a commission made up of people with disabilities who will then examine the living standards and the problems of people with disabilities and put forward alternative proposals? We can do exactly the same principle in a number of other areas. We can have youth commissions and so on. We can have an international policy commission made up of the many talented and incredibly knowledgeable people from all over the world who are supporters or members of our party. Think of what we can achieve together. Think of what we can do by mobilising people to do something different. We'll be that voice. Reform have no answers other than division and hatred. The Labour Party is heading off in the direction of authoritarianism and free market economics and sucking up to Trump and anybody else around the world. They are not an alternative. Let's be that alternative. Let's be that alternative voice. And you know what? We can build a great culture, bring people together, music, poetry, art, literature, as well as all the campaigning work that we do. I've done a lot of that within the Peace and Justice Project, and I see the Peace and Justice Project as being an important place for the germination of ideas, which will, of course, be fed into the thinking of our party, your party, our party. So let's be together, work hard together, campaign together, but above all, show the greatest possible respect to each other, because it's often not shown by state machines, it's not shown by the media. We'll show respect to each other and we'll show the power of communities to achieve things together. Thank you.